The world around them twisted once more. Lena barely had time to gather her bearings before the familiar voice of Elrax echoed through the air again. "The second trial has ended. You have failed, but you have learned." Her body trembled with exhaustion, but she knew there was no time for rest. They were far from finished. The landscape had shifted again this time to a vast, barren desert. The sky above was a deep red, casting an eerie glow over the cracked earth beneath their feet. The air was thick, almost suffocating, and every step they took felt like walking through a heavy fog. Lena looked around, squinting against the blinding light. "Where are we now?" she asked, her voice hoarse from the previous trial. "You are in the third trial." Elrax's voice boomed from the distance, as though it were coming from everywhere at once. "This trial will test not only your ability to survive, but your willingness to sacrifice everything you've learned. For you are not just fighting for your lives anymore, you are fighting for the future of humanity." The weight of his words sank deep into her chest. She thought about the trials they had already faced. The first trial had challenged their decision-making. The second trial had tested their willingness to sacrifice. And now, here they were, standing in a desert, unsure of what would come next. Her team gathered around her, the tension in the air thickening with every passing second. Lena's eyes locked with each of them. She had to keep them focused. She had to keep them together. "We've come this far," she said, her voice steady, despite the uncertainty gnawing at her insides. "We can make it through this too. Stay alert, stay strong." They nodded in silent agreement, drawing strength from each other. But something felt different now. This trial wasn't just about survival. Something in the air told Lena that the stakes were higher than they had ever been. A sudden rumble beneath their feet broke the silence. The ground cracked open, and from the chasm below, a massive figure began to rise. It was a creature unlike anything they had seen before. It towered above them, its body covered in dark, jagged armor that seemed to pulse with energy. Its eyes glowed with an intense red light, its massive claws scraping against the desert floor. Lena's heart raced. "What is that thing?" she whispered, her mind scrambling for a plan. "It is a guardian," Elrax's voice echoed. "The final trial will force you to confront your greatest fear. This guardian will test your resolve. It will fight until your will to survive is broken. You must defeat it, or you will fail." The creature stepped forward, its steps shaking the ground. The resistance fighters instinctively raised their weapons, preparing for the fight. But Lena held up a hand. "Wait." Her mind was racing. A creature like this was no ordinary challenge. They had been through battles, but this was different. The creature wasn't just an enemy to defeat. It was something far deeper. It was their fear, their desperation, given physical form. Lena had seen this before, in herself and in the others, the fear of failure, the fear of losing everything. It was something they all shared, and it had to be faced. "We need to face this together," Lena said, her voice clear and firm. "We've been through too much to fall apart now." The team gathered closer, their unity stronger than ever. They knew the cost of failure. There was no turning back. The creature's massive claws lunged toward them. But Lena reacted quickly, signaling the group to scatter. Gunfire rang out, but it was clear the weapons had little effect on the creature's thick armor. Lena's mind raced for a solution. What was the key to defeating something like this? Was it just about brute force? Or was there something more? The creature swung its claws again, sending one of the fighters sprawling into the sand. Lena's heart skipped a beat, but the fighter quickly scrambled to their feet, determined not to give up. "Can't keep doing this," another fighter shouted, struggling to get a clean shot. "It's too powerful." Lena's gaze shifted to the creature's glowing eyes. "It's not about power," she muttered, almost to herself. "It's about understanding. We need to understand what it's testing." The creature roared again, and Lena felt the ground shake beneath her. There had to be something they were missing. And then, in that moment, she realized something. The creature wasn't attacking them because it wanted to destroy them. It was testing their resolve. It wasn't about defeating the creature with weapons. It was about defeating the fear it represented. "It's not a fight we're meant to win with weapons," Lena shouted, drawing the attention of the team. It's a fight we're meant to win with our minds, with our hearts. Lena took a deep breath, stepping forward, her hands raised. She looked directly into the creature's eyes. "We're not afraid of you," she said firmly. "We're not afraid of failing. We've lost so much already, but we've learned to keep going. We will not be broken." The creature hesitated, its claws hovering in midair. For a moment, it seemed like it was reading her, studying her every word. Then, without warning, it lowered its claws, slowly backing away. Lena stood frozen, unable to believe what she was seeing. The creature had stopped. It was retreating, and then the voice of Elrax echoed one last time. "You have passed the final trial, humans." Lena's legs gave way and she dropped to her knees, her body trembling with exhaustion. The tension in the air lifted, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she felt the weight of the world begin to ease. They had done it. They had faced their greatest fear and won. The desert around them began to fade, and the sky lightened. The dark red hue of the air lifted, and the ground beneath their feet softened. The endless wasteland was gone, replaced by a beautiful, serene landscape. It was as if they had stepped out of a nightmare and into a dream. But before Lena could process the change, Elrax's voice filled the air once again, this time softer, almost approving. "You've proven yourselves worthy, humans. The price has been paid. Earth is saved. You have the power to fight the Zillyrians, to take back your world. But understand this, the path you have taken is not without consequence. You are no longer just humans. You are a part of something greater. Your future is no longer entirely your own." Lena stared at the horizon, her mind still racing. Earth had been saved, but at what cost? They had passed the trials, but now they were tied to Elrax's greater plan. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. "You are now a part of the cosmic order, humanity," Elrax replied, his tone solemn. "You will be called upon again when the time comes. And when it does, you will answer." The words hung heavy in the air. Lena felt a shiver run down her spine, but she didn't back down. The future was uncertain, but for now, they had one. They had earned their place in the stars. The team gathered around her, exhausted but triumphant. They had faced impossible odds, and they had survived. And for now, that was enough. Lena took a deep breath and looked out at the world they had saved. "We've won today," she said, her voice steady. "But tomorrow, we fight again." And with that, humanity's future was no longer just about surviving. It was about standing strong, facing the unknown, and proving that no matter what, they would never give up. Lena Thompson had always been a woman who prided herself on control. As a successful corporate lawyer, every part of her life was carefully managed. From the moment she booked her flight from New York to Chicago, to the moment she stepped on the plane, everything had been arranged. There were no surprises. It had been a long trip. 3 days of back-to-back meetings, endless cups of coffee, and uncomfortable hotel rooms. As the plane began its ascent into the clear blue sky, Lena sighed and settled into her seat. She took out a novel she had been meaning to read for months, but her eyes kept drifting back to the window. She was exhausted. The hum of the plane's engines and the low murmur of other passengers created a calming atmosphere. Yet something tugged at the back of her mind, something unfamiliar, and it unsettled her. She looked around, scanning the rows of passengers. It was an ordinary flight. People scrolling through their phones, reading, dozing off, or talking quietly with one another. Nothing out of the ordinary. But then her eyes fell on him. For a split second, Lena's heart stopped. It was him, David, her ex-husband. She blinked, trying to clear the fog of exhaustion from her mind, but there was no mistaking it. He was sitting across the aisle reading a newspaper. His face was the same. The familiar dark brown hair, the sharp jawline, the eyes that always seemed a little too intense, the smile that made her heart flutter, but that was impossible. David had died 5 years ago. A car accident, the kind that makes the news for a day before people forget. It was a terrible sudden loss, and it left her with more grief than she ever thought possible. No, couldn't be him. She stared at him, her breath caught in her chest. He didn't seem to notice her gaze, too absorbed in his newspaper. The man who looked like David didn't move with the same casual ease that she remembered. He sat rigidly, almost too still, as though he was calculating every motion. It was absurd. She was seeing things. It was just a stranger who looked like David. But the resemblance was uncanny. Lena felt her palms begin to sweat. Her fingers gripped the armrest, but she couldn't tear her eyes away from him. She watched, heart racing, as he turned the page of his newspaper slowly. He adjusted his glasses and lifted his gaze, and for the briefest moment, their eyes met. Her heart nearly skipped a beat. His eyes, there was something different in them. A glint of recognition, and something more. Something she couldn't place. David had been gone for years. What was going on? Lena's breath hitched in her chest. She turned away from him quickly, feeling lightheaded. She reached for her water bottle, trying to steady her shaking hands. But even as she did, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Her mind raced with questions. Could it be some strange form of déjà vu? Could she be imagining it after so many years of grief? Or had she finally lost her mind, seeing her dead husband in a crowded plane? She glanced back over her shoulder. The man was still there, still reading. Her heart pounded in her chest as she slowly, almost reluctantly, pushed herself out of her seat. The aisle felt narrower than ever before as she walked toward him. She didn't want to do this, didn't want to face the possibility that she was hallucinating. But something deep inside urged her on, a force stronger than any doubt. When she reached him, the sound of the plane's engines grew distant. The air seemed to thicken, and for a moment, the entire world went quiet. "David," she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The man looked up from his newspaper, a smile curled at the corners of his mouth. But it was too controlled, too knowing. It didn't reach his eyes. It wasn't the smile she remembered. His eyes, those eyes, locked onto hers, intense and unreadable. "Hello, Lena," he said in a voice that was both familiar and foreign at the same time. "It's been a long time." Lena's breath caught in her throat. There was no way. It couldn't be. He was dead. She watched him buried in the cold ground. There had been no mistake, but here he was. Lena felt her knees go weak. She wanted to speak, wanted to demand answers, but the words wouldn't come. Her mind was spinning. "How could this be happening, David?" "This isn't possible," she stammered, her voice barely audible over the sound of the plane. "You died. You died 5 years ago." The man's expression softened, but there was an eerie calmness about him. "I know," he said quietly, setting the newspaper down in his lap. His hands moved with an unsettling precision, as though each motion was calculated. "But things have changed, Lena. I'm not who I was." Lena's stomach churned. She stepped back, trying to keep her composure, but panic was bubbling up from the pit of her stomach. No, this doesn't make sense. You're not him. You can't be?" As the man, the one who looked like David, stood slowly. He was taller now, or perhaps his posture made him seem so. His movements were deliberate, mechanical, almost too perfect. His eyes, that strange gleam, never left hers as he stood. He tilted his head ever so slightly, studying her. "I know this is hard to understand, but you need to listen, Lena," he said, his voice calm, but there was an edge to it. "I'm not human anymore. Not in the way you think." Lena's world seemed to tilt, her body frozen in place. "What are you talking about?" she whispered. His eyes glowed for a split second, a faint flicker of light that almost seemed too bright, too unnatural. She blinked, and it was gone. But the air around him felt heavier. The other passengers had begun to notice, murmurs spreading, but no one said anything. Everyone was either staring at them or pretending not to see. "I'm sorry you had to see me like this," he continued. "I was sent here to explain things. You deserve to know the truth." Lena could barely process the words. She could only stare, her mind struggling to catch up with the situation. "What truth? What do you mean you're not human anymore?" You're dead." "Not entirely," the man replied. "What I became after? The transformation. is not something that can be easily explained. I know this is difficult, Lena. Believe me, I didn't ask for this. But I'm here now, and I have something important to tell you. He stepped forward, and Lena instinctively stepped back, heart hammering in her chest. She wanted to scream, wanted to run, but her feet wouldn't move. A sudden flash of light filled the cabin, bright enough to make Lena squint. The plane rocked violently as though caught in a storm. Passengers screamed, and the flight attendants rushed to calm everyone, but Lena couldn't focus on them. Her attention was on the man in front of her. The light seemed to pulse around him, and then, as quickly as it came, it disappeared. The man, the alien. The being who once was David was no longer the man she had known. His skin shimmered, glowing faintly with an otherworldly energy. His eyes were no longer brown. They were a strange, glowing color, something alien and unsettling. Lena gasped and stumbled backward, falling into the seat behind her. The world seemed to spin, the reality of the situation crashing down around her. The man, or whatever he was now, gave her a small, apologetic look. "I'm not the person you think I am anymore," he said softly. "I'm sorry." Lena could barely hold herself together. She wanted to scream, to run, but her body was frozen in place, as if bound by some invisible force. She only managed to whisper, barely audible, "What? What happened to you?" He looked down for a moment, as though struggling with how to explain. Then he met her gaze once more. "I was changed, Lena, reborn. I'm not human anymore, and the world you knew is not the one you're living in anymore." Before she could respond, the lights flickered, and the plane shook again. Something was coming, something big. Like David. But he wasn't David. Not anymore. His appearance was the same, his voice familiar, but everything else felt wrong. His eyes glowing faintly with an otherworldly light only added to the sense that she wasn't dealing with a human being anymore. The passengers around her seemed to be in a daze. Some were still murmuring to each other, others were staring, uncertain whether to believe what they were seeing. The flight attendants had quickly moved to calm the chaos, but no one seemed to know what to do about the strange, glowing man sitting across from Lena. She felt a wave of nausea wash over her. She needed to understand. She couldn't just sit here, trapped in her own head, while the world turned upside down. "Why are you doing this?" Lena whispered, the words barely escaping her lips. "Why appear to me now? After all these years?" David, or whatever he was, stared at her quietly for a moment. The faint glow in his eyes dimmed slightly, and for a brief second, he looked almost human. A ghost of the man she had loved. But that feeling faded as quickly as it had come. "I'm sorry, Lena," he said softly. "This isn't how I wanted you to find out. But I had to. I couldn't stay away forever." Lena blinked, trying to keep the tears from welling up. She had always believed in the finality of death. When David died, it was over. There were no second chances, no coming back. And yet, here he was, alive or something like alive, staring at her with a mixture of regret and something darker, something unreadable. Why? She repeated more firmly this time, trying to gain some control over her emotions. "What happened to you? How are you even here? You died. You can't just come back." David exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't come back, Lena. I was taken. After the accident. My body was recovered, but not by anyone you would expect. I was taken by a race of aliens. They do things to humans, experiments, if you will. I wasn't the first, and I won't be the last." Lena's mind raced. Aliens? Experiments? It sounded like something out of a science fiction novel, not real life. But she was staring at him, and there was nothing about this that felt fake. The strange energy around him was undeniable. "Experiments?" she repeated, trying to make sense of the words. "What kind of experiments? What are you talking about?" David Notal, as he had called himself, took a deep breath before continuing. "The Xiphorians, that's the name of the race. They're an advanced species, far beyond anything humans can imagine. They've been watching Earth for centuries. And when I died, they saw an opportunity. They took my body, reprogrammed my mind, and infused me with their consciousness. Lena's head spun. Reprogrammed your mind? Infused you with their consciousness? What does that even mean? He looked at her with a pained expression, as if seeing her confusion hurt him more than it should have. They changed me, Lena. My memories, my thoughts, my desires. I still remember everything about our life together. But I also remember their goals, their objectives. I became a vessel for their consciousness. They chose me for this because they believed my mind was strong enough to handle the transformation. Lena's breath caught in her throat. The idea of someone taking over someone else's body was horrifying. But what made it worse was the person who had been taken. It wasn't just a stranger to her. It was David, the man she had married, the man she had loved. I don't understand, Lena whispered. Why would they do this? What do they want from Earth? Why you? Tal's eyes darkened as he looked at her. They don't want to destroy Earth, if that's what you're thinking. At least, not in the way you're imagining. They want something else. They want us. The humans. They've been observing your species for centuries, Lena, and they believe that humanity has the potential to evolve into something greater. Something they can use. Lena recoiled slightly. Use? You're talking about us like we're cattle. Not cattle, Tal replied, his voice soft but firm. Humanity has incredible potential, Lena. You've proven it time and time again. The Xiphorians believe that humans can ascend to become something more than what you are now. But they need help, guidance. And that's where I come in. I'm here to help you. To prepare Earth for the coming changes. Lena felt a wave of anger rising within her, but she swallowed it down, focusing on the one thing she needed to understand. What does this have to do with me? Why come to me now? Why not just tell the world what's going on? Tal's expression grew serious. Because the Xiphorians are already here, Lena. They've infiltrated governments, corporations, even military forces. They've been planning this for a long time. I'm not the only one of my kind. There are others, hidden in places you wouldn't expect. But they can't act openly, not yet. Not until the time is right. Lena felt the weight of his words crash down on her. The idea that the world had already been infiltrated by aliens was something she could hardly wrap her head around. Her thoughts began to race. Are you telling me that the people in power, the people I've trusted all these years, they might not be who I think they are? Tal nodded slowly. Exactly. The Xiphorians are incredibly patient. They've been taking their time, quietly manipulating things, gathering information, but they're running out of time. Soon the truth will be revealed, and Earth will have to make a choice to join the Xiphorians and become part of something bigger, or to resist, to fight against the inevitable. Lena's mind was spinning. She had always thought of herself as rational, someone who could think her way through any problem. But this was beyond anything she had ever imagined. Aliens infiltrating the highest levels of power, her dead husband turned into a vessel for another species. But the more she thought about it, the more the pieces started to fall into place. There had always been strange coincidences, unexplained events that never seemed to make sense. Things that now, in light of what Tal was saying, seemed a little too convenient. You're telling me that these Xiphorians have been planning for decades, and now they're ready to reveal themselves? She asked, trying to steady her voice. Tal met her gaze, his expression grave. Yes, but they won't just reveal themselves to the world. They need help. They need humanity to accept them. And they need someone to lead the way. That's where I come in. Lena shook her head. You want me to help them? You want me to help an alien species take over the planet? Tal's voice softened, and for a moment, he almost seemed human again. I don't want to take over, Lena. I just want to help. I believe in humanity's potential. I always have. But you can't do this alone. The Xiphorians have their own agenda, but they've never given up on humanity. They want to see you succeed. Lena stared at him, feeling as though the world she knew had completely unraveled around her. She had loved David. She had loved him so deeply. But this wasn't him. This was something else, something alien. And yet, it was still him or the remnants of him, somewhere deep inside. But the more she thought about what he said, the more she realized that things were more complicated than she had ever imagined. If the Xiphorians had been infiltrating humanity for so long, how much of the world was truly under their control? She didn't know the answer, but she did know one thing. She had to find out the truth. For herself, for humanity, and the answers wouldn't come from Tal. They would come from somewhere else. "Tell me everything," Lena said quietly. "Everything you know, and I'll decide what to do." Tal's eyes softened, and for the first time since their conversation began, he looked almost relieved. "I'll tell you what I can. But be warned, Lena. Once you know the truth, there's no turning back." Lena nodded, her mind racing. She didn't know what the future held, but she was determined to find out, and she wouldn't let anything stop her.